Historically, attorneys general are one of the most sensitive positions that a president appoints. And frankly, they put somebody they really trust in that position because oftentimes it's somebody that is going to protect them from getting in trouble. You can go back to John Mitchell in the Nixon years. You can go to Eric Holder in the Obama years. And obviously, the president was very frustrated with the actions of his first attorney general because of the fact that he felt that Jeff Sessions was not protecting him, was not functioning in that role, and he ripped the bark off him for over a year for his decision to recuse. I suspect that the president was pretty pleased with the performance of Bill Barr today, and particularly on the issue of obstruction, because, again, on collusion, it does appear, and I will say that the Attorney General said it about a half dozen times. I lost count after that. There was no collusion. There was no cooperation. There was no coordination. But there doesn't seem to be any contradiction there. When it came to the obstruction case, and as he pointed out, there were at least 10 instances that the special counsel raised that could be considered potential obstruction. Then you got into this very curious area where the Attorney General seemed almost to be acting as the counselor for the defense, for the counselor for the president, rather than the Attorney General talking about his motives, talking about his anger, his feeling that this was unfair and he was big, there were leaks, and really, as I say, making a case for the president. I suspect the Democrats' heads on Capitol Hill were exploding, and they're going to come down very sharply about the way that Bill Barr today laid this out, because there's no question, this is the first look, in a sense, that everybody has gotten today at the Mueller report, and this was as good a case as the president and the president's lawyers could make.
This morning, Trump's Attorney General Bill Barr held a press conference that both the right and left realized was the means to one end: to spin the Mueller report one last time as a positive for Trump, to influence Americans' thinking before we'd have the chance to actually see it. That's the only reason Barr wouldn't simply release the report, which Americans have waited 2 years for and have every right to see, having funded it through our tax dollars. And in doing so, he completed the job that Trump hired him to do. Barr was handpicked because of his stated opposition to the special counsel investigation. To think that he would do anything other than continue his opposition to it, to think that Trump would replace Jeff Sessions with anyone other than a loyalist sycophant, was misguided at best. But never was the Attorney General's intention to act on Trump's behalf rather than on behalf of the rule of law more apparent than when it comes to the 10 separate episodes of obstruction that Barr was falling over himself to downplay.
In assessing the president's actions discussed in the report, it is important to bear in mind the context. President Trump faced an unprecedented situation. As he entered into office and sought to perform his responsibilities as president, federal agents and prosecutors were scrutinizing his conduct before and after taking office and the conduct of some of his associates. At the same time, there was relentless speculation in the news media about the president's personal culpability. Yet, as he said from the beginning, there was, in fact, no collusion. And as the special counsel's report acknowledges, there is substantial evidence to show that the president was frustrated and angered by his sincere belief that the investigation was undermining his presidency, propelled by his political opponents, and fueled by illegal leaks.
Again, this is the highest law enforcement officer in the nation who held a public press conference to proclaim that 10 separate instances of obstruction of justice were not a big deal, nothing to see here, all good. And not only does he defend his decision that these 10 instances of obstruction were all permissible, but it's his groveling defense that Trump was frustrated and angry as some sort of justification for these actions to have been committed. And in Trump's defense, I didn't realize he was frustrated. That truly changes everything. I mean, did Trump's mom write this defense? Is being frustrated justification to not only obstruct justice, but for such actions to be deemed permissible at the literal highest level of government? What Barr is basically saying is that Trump's instances of obstruction were merely reactions to being what he viewed as unfairly attacked. Not that he wanted to obstruct Mueller's investigation because he was guilty, which is absurd. Barr purposefully conflates Trump's motive, which was that he acted in response to being attacked, and Trump's intent, which was to stop the investigation from moving forward, or otherwise put, to obstruct justice. Barr knows the difference between motive and intent, but he's banking on the fact that everyone else doesn't. Barr says that Trump faced an unprecedented situation, that investigators were breathing down his neck even before taking office in his desperation to exonerate Trump. But that's like saying California Highway Patrol faced an unprecedented situation when OJ took off on a high-speed chase down the 405, and for that reason, OJ should be exonerated. Because it hadn't happened before doesn't excuse it, doesn't make it all of a sudden legal or make the perpetrator innocent. In fact, it's the opposite. The situation was unprecedented because no president had before benefited from a foreign adversary meddling in an American election. No campaigns team sought to set up meetings with that same country to discuss getting dirt on a political opponent. No candidate had ever promoted that foreign adversary's trove of hacked emails and documents as they appeared on WikiLeaks, which Trump did more than 140 times on the campaign trail. Unprecedented? Absolutely. But there being no precedent for these blatantly awful actions is as desperate an excuse as it gets. Then again, holding a press conference to spin a report moments before it's due out is also as desperate as it gets. And not exactly something you need to do if you are quote-unquote fully exonerated.